Hey, this is Jeremy. Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can check out more great content on threeheadedeagle.com. Also find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. New podcasts go live on Saturday, so be sure to subscribe to the weekly podcast on iTunes and Stitcher.
All right, guys. Hey, what's going on? This is Adam with Three Headed Eagles podcast. I'm here with Jeremy and Strons. What's going on, fellas?
Not a much. How you doing, buddy?
Not a much.
Not much.
Not a much.
Not
what's
a
up?
much.
Nothing.
That's it? That's all you got for me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised Strons isn't having a fantastic day like I am.
You're having a fantastic day?
I am. I'm having a freaking wonderful day.
That's good. I'm
Yeah.
glad. Why is that? I bet I could tell you. I bet I could tell.
Yes.
Is it the same reason why I'm having a fantastic week?
Are you going to tell yourself off on the show today? Because that's why I'm having a great day. I got to tell you guys off about your SB1062 comments.
Well, before we get to that, because that will be an interesting
You're having a good
conversation.
day because you're anticipating something that may or may not happen.
No, it's going to happen. We're going to talk about it.
We'll see. We'll see.
We will. But
And
first,
you'll both be wrong.
But first, can we have a little bit of a sadness
Oh, this
Piers-
is a great week.
for the loss of
Sorry,
Piers
sorry.
Morgan's show on CNN?
Yeah. Moment of silence. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm done with it.
All right.
Holy cow. Here's all I got to say about this whole situation with Piers Morgan. We're only going to touch on it real quick, but it's when you tell your audience that they're stupid for believing in what they believe in, they will kick you off the air. I'm just saying. Let me go to America and tell them that their constitution is stupid and
Yeah,
then expect to
brilliant.
stay on the air.
That guy was epically bad.
He was
I mean, bad to a whole new level of
Did you guys
bad.
like Larry King?
I didn't like Larry King, but a lot of people did like Larry King. And when you take somebody that bad and you put him in Larry King's slot and you just see his ratings like the stock ticker after Obama took office, just straight down, it's epically bad.
Yeah, Larry King wasn't that great, but whoa.
Yeah, I
mean,
never saw anything good from Piers Morgan.
Maybe Piers Morgan needs some suspenders.
Every clip
Maybe.
of Piers
I think
Morgan,
I think that's what it was.
His shoulders need to be up another foot,
Yeah.
like Larry King's.
I'm pretty sure Larry King scratches his earlobes with his shoulders.
If I was him, I would have at least tried to sound a little more American when I'm talking about American politics.
See, here's the thing. I don't even mind that he's from Britain because I'm a fan of Stein, right? He's always on... what's his name? It's not Ben Stein, obviously. That's the wrong guy. Mark Stein.
You're like those Clear Eyes
I don't even know
commercials.
Mark
Stein. Mark Stein's pretty smart guy. He studies international law and economics and stuff like that. So he talks about the relationships between like America and Europe and whatnot. He's a really smart guy. So it has nothing to do with the fact that Piers Morgan is from England. It has everything to do with the fact that Piers Morgan's an idiot.
See, no, it does, but I really don't want to hear an English guy talking about American politics. I'm really not interested in an English guy's opinion of American politics. Come over here from England and tell me everything that needs to change about America. And then tell me about how great Britain was because they did it over in Britain. What the freak are you doing here?
He couldn't get a job after tapping some phones, allegedly.
Oh, right. All the
Remember?
illegal crap that he did over in England.
Allegedly.
Essentially, allegedly.
Allegedly.
And then he allegedly got
Yeah.
the boot and came over here, and CNN's the only idiots that'll hire him.
Right.
Well, you guys say that Piers Morgan's an idiot, so just so everyone can make their own judgments, here's a nice Twitter conversation between Piers Morgan and Carol Roth. This is a couple years old. This is from 2012.
Who's Carol Roth?
Well, she's some commentator. I don't even know.
She's somebody.
She's somebody.
Okay.
She's somebody. She's verified on
Does
Twitter.
she have more subscribers
She's got a
than
blue
we
check
do?
mark?
Yeah, we have like 2 subscribers, so it's not hard to beat.
You have 2 subscribers.
My grandma
I
has
have
more subscribers.
3,900 subscribers.
So here's Piers Morgan. He says, the Second Amendment was devised with muskets in mind, not high-powered handguns and assault rifles. Fact. Period.
Fact.
Carol Roth comes back. It was devised for people to be able to protect themselves with the same type of weaponry used by those from whom they need protection. Right? So if the government has this kind of power, we need it.
Yep.
Piers
we talked
Morgan-
about that a
my
couple weeks ago.
tank.
Absolutely.
Piers Morgan comes back. Where exactly does it say that in the Constitution? Must have missed it. And she says,
You did.
right next to the word muskets.
Boom, sucker.
In your face, Piers Morgan.
Oh
that was
my
just
God.
too good.
I'll share it with him. It's actually in the Second Amendment. Well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state.
Right.
The purpose of it is to keep the free state secure. So, yeah, you actually have to use a little bit of logic. Well, if we're going to protect ourselves from an out-of-control government, how would we do so? Well, hopefully with the same guns they've got. Because if you're trying to do it with sticks and stones, then you might break their bones. All right. After I said that, I realized I had to
How
keep
bad
going
it
with
was.
it.
That was
Yeah.
bad. Well, go ahead.
But no, yeah, Adam, you were saying that like it wasn't just muskets that they had back then.
For sure.
In the olden years.
What a lot of people who have that argument don't realize, and everybody's seen that meme where it's like assault musket and it has like all the modern technology on a musket, which is funny. But what people don't realize is that there was more than just muskets back then. There was all kinds of new and basically unused technology in the military that would be considered in our day and age a machine gun with multiple rounds being fired per minute.
Like a kind of like a basic Gatling gun type.
Yeah,
deal?
you would load several charges into one gun, and obviously it was limited to how many barrels were on that gun, but it would light several charges in one gun. Now, it was cumbersome and heavy. It would be about, some of them had like 10 to 12 barrels all lined up, and you would light one fuse, and it would light the powder, and it would go across all the barrels, and it would fire all the barrels at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. I was
Yeah.
about to call you out.
Can
on
you-
That, then I realized.
No, that's true.
Yeah. No, I've seen those.
So
But if you think about how many rounds per second, I mean, it's however many rounds are on that, it's, they're all lined up. It's not like it spins or anything. It's all lined up. However many rounds are on that is how many rounds per second it's being fired, because they all get fired basically instantly.
Right.
So,
Well, but the big thing is, if the point of it is, if the military had that, then the people would have been allowed to have had it too.
right.
They had just thrown off an out of control government, and they weren't going to, and they did it because they were as well armed as
Right.
said out of control government. Interestingly enough, because the English helped arm the Americans for
Right.
French Indian War and the Minutemen and all that. But that was
question. Do you guys know, can you own a cannon?
Answer:
Yes.
How many?
How many cannons
There's
can you
a
own?
number.
I don't know.
I know you
Is
can
there
get
a limit?
permitted for larger caliber guns like that.
I don't even think you need a permit here in Arizona. I don't think we have a limit on the caliber.
Well, I think it's interesting. Most people would say that owning a cannon would be ridiculous,
I know somebody
be.
who owns a cannon,
but they had cannons back then.
Uh-huh.
right?
That okay. Second Amendment
I'm down.
done. You just get a bunch of cannons.
Right.
Let's buy a cannon with 3 cannons, so you light them all at the same time, and it'll be the 3-headed cannon.
Yes, please. No, I think this is an interesting topic. And before we get to SB 1062, which is obviously going to
Which you guys
consume
are
the
both
rest
wrong
of our
on.
time,
Like it's
On
consumed
this.
everything all week.
right?
Uh-huh.
Let's, since we're on the topic of guns, let's talk about HuffPo's article on gun safety. Did you guys see this?
Yeah, I saw this.
So basically, what
I
happened,
love Huffington Post. Please never ever go away because you give us so much easy material.
basically what happened is a guy was demonstrating gun safety, right?
Well, and okay, I just have to say, when there's a lot of like baiting going on online where they put an article title out there that's like, oh, I gotta click on that clickbait. You click on it. Oh, what a letdown! I was totally let down. They make it sound like he's demonstrating like in front of a classroom. That's what I'm picturing.
Right.
This guy kills himself in front of a classroom, but no, that's not what happened. What happened?
No,
Adam?
basically he's showing off for his girlfriend, basically, and he had been drinking all day, and he was in the room. It says that there was a 7, 10, and 12-year-old in the home, but they didn't see it. So I'm assuming he was like back in his bedroom where he keeps his firearms, and to quote display gun safety and to say a gun is safe when it's unloaded. He decides to put the gun to his head and pull the trigger to say, see, it's not going to do anything if it's not loaded. Well, Jeremy, quick question. You're a gun owner.
Yep.
Actually, you know what? I have a better idea. Strons,
Not a gun owner.
not a gun owner,
No.
but not opposed to it, right?
Soon though, right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because you've been talking about it.
Would you
Sure, yeah.
say it would be proper gun safety to ever put a barrel of a gun to your head?
Well, no.
Good. Okay, I'm glad we got that figured out. Here's the thing. I own firearms and I am a gun advocate. I brought Strawn's shooting one of the first times I brought a group shooting to kind of teach them gun safety and things like that. I brought you with.
Yeah, and you took the gun and you put it at your temple and you pulled
I
the trigger and
remember
you
that.
said, "Look, guns are safe."
Yeah,
I
it's
remember
exactly
that.
what I did because you were there.
Yeah.
Jeremy, you were there actually.
Luckily,
We
it
had
was
a
a,
bonfire
it was a
and
bad
everything.
it was a bad angle, and so the bullet actually ricocheted off of Adam's skull, or he'd be dead today.
Luckily, I have a thick skull.
Yep.
I just think it's ridiculous. I think the number one rule to gun safety is, Jeremy, what?
Weapon pointed in a safe direction.
You always, let me emphasize, always point your gun in the safe direction. Even if the chamber's open, it's just good practice to never, what they call is muzzling, never point the muzzle of your gun towards anything that you don't want to kill.
Because
Right?
you're supposed to treat guns like they can kill anything, whether they're loaded or unloaded, correct? Isn't that like number?
Yep. Treat
Rule
every
number
weapon
2.
as if it is loaded.
All the
Weapon
time.
in a safe direction. Treat every weapon as if it is loaded.
Mm-hmm.
Finger off the trigger till you're ready to shoot.
Yep.
Now, I will say the one rule that he could have broken and still had this happen was finger off the trigger till you're ready to shoot. If you're actually planning on blowing your brains out, okay, you could break that rule and still shoot yourself.
No
okay?
kidding.
But at the same time, okay, yeah, just to clarify, in case anybody's confused about this, your head, that's not a safe direction. Ever.
No,
No, you don't want to point a gun at your head.
No, here's my issue with this, and this is why this is such an easy target to attack this article. That is not gun safety.
That's not somebody demonstrating gun safety. A drunk guy at his house trying to convince his girlfriend that guns are okay is not a gun safety lesson.
No, nothing of what he did would be considered gun safety.
Did you guys
so
see the
to
comments?
say that he was displaying gun safety is stupid. He was actually displaying gun irresponsibility.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys see the comments?
Do I need to
No.
look? Is it
Are
ridiculous?
they awesome?
Well, there's quite a few people. I'll say this: there are quite a few people saying this guy's a total idiot. However,
On Huffington Post?
yeah, no, it was
Here's
the top comment was this guy's dumb.
Oh yeah,
Right,
I'll read it
right.
real quick. I have it right here. He was attempting to demonstrate gun safety by holding the gun to his head and pulling the trigger. He could have used a refresher course on gun safety.
However,
Yeah, okay.
scroll down a ways and you see people say things like, "Clearly, more evidence that guns are dangerous." And I'm like, well, yeah, that's the point of a gun, right?
Guns in the hands of a drunk guy who is willing to point a gun at his own head. Yep, that's a dangerous gun.
But my point
Absolutely.
is, isn't every gun dangerous? Isn't that the point of a gun?
I won't say yes, because here's the thing. Any gun on its own, no, is not dangerous, because a gun won't jump off the table and point itself at you and shoot you.
No. That's not what I'm saying, though. But the purpose
But
of a weapon,
It is meant to be deadly force.
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
That
And it
is
needs
why
to be
they
treated,
exist.
It needs to be treated with that respect. It's
Yeah.
the same way. It's the same reason why when you get in your car, when you drive responsibly. It's
Ish.
because that can be a deadly
Ish.
weapon too.
Yeah.
But the purpose of a car isn't to kill people.
But it is considered a deadly weapon.
Yes, it can be, and I'm not arguing
Right.
against that. But I'm saying a car has multiple purposes. A gun, I mean, you can go to target practice. The purpose of it isn't to kill someone then or defend yourself then.
Right.
But we use guns in war.
Right.
Police departments have guns.
Essentially, the purpose of a gun is to bring death.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
It is the purpose of a firearm.
Yes.
You're using it to defend yourself, where you're going to use deadly or near deadly force, or you're using it to hunt, where you're
Gonna kill an animal.
You're going to kill an animal. Yeah. The purpose of a gun is to bring death.
So it doesn't ever surprise me when people say that they're dangerous. Yes, that is inherent. Now,
Right.
an idiot pointing a gun at his head saying he's doing gun safety,
That's evolution.
I feel bad for laughing.
That's
especially
Darwinism.
When I read that there's what was it, 7, 10, and 12-year-old that he left behind.
That were in the house. It said they were in the house. I don't know if that was his kids.
Okay. I felt bad for laughing about the story, but at the same time, it's like, okay, if you're going to be a gun owner, this is just proof that you have to be a responsible gun owner.
Right.
You cannot give any fuel to the left at all. You have to be the most responsible person with your firearm that there possibly could be. You can't do any tricks or stupid stuff. You can't, if you decide to record yourself doing some trick shooting and don't put it on YouTube for everybody to see if you're doing something stupid or dangerous. Don't give them any fuel at all. Don't let them have something to go, look, this is what people are doing with their guns. See, they're just,
Yeah.
you guys are all dumb.
Yeah. And here's the thing is other gun owners need to be the ones to speak up and cry foul when somebody's doing something stupid.
Yeah.
Like we definitely, if we don't want to be regulated, we need to make sure that we encourage each other to regulate ourselves. We really do. Otherwise, we will be regulated.
Yep.
It's a simple concept. Now,
Well, and what this article is aiming to do, because the way it's worded, it sounds like there's a police officer came into a classroom demonstrating gun safety, and the firearm just went off and killed a bunch of kids, right? That's what I was expecting to read.
Right.
However, I haven't seen that article.
No.
I've seen the article. The guy put the gun to his head and shot himself.
A drunk guy killed himself.
Well, that's not how that's not gun safety.
no.
It's a drunk guy at his house, and he accidentally shot himself. Didn't it said it was the third gun that he put to his head, right? He was showing that guns, he was trying to show his girlfriend that guns weren't dangerous when they're unloaded. Well, okay. You still should be treating it as if it is loaded. We already established that's one of the rules. You should still have it pointed in a safe direction. That's another rule. But you also, if you're going to treat it like it's not loaded, then you should probably make sure it's not loaded.
Yeah.
Just saying.
No, I agree. I think this is another opportunity that Huffington Post is taken, and you know what? I guess it sells to their audience to basically lie and get some hits and traffic.
Well, I'll say you asked me, Adam. We know if that was gun safety. I remember growing up. I remember the story vividly. My dad had hunting rifles and shotguns, and he handed me the shotgun or whatever. He was cleaning it, and I was holding it, and I was like, "Oh, this." I was probably 10 or whatever. I was like, "Oh, this is cool," you know. Right? You know, you get your phone and does the whole shotgun noise.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And I
the
pulled,
Biden blast.
I knew it was not loaded, but I pulled the trigger. Right? Just pointed the gun at the ground and pulled the trigger. And my dad got so mad at me and was like, "Never, ever do that. Why would you? Don't do that. That could have been loaded. That could have gone through the floor and killed somebody." You know, and I was like, "Oh, I'll never do that again." And I learned my lesson then. I was a 10-year-old kid, not around guns. But that's the thing. You got to teach your kids that kind of stuff early, because if you're not informed, you're not educated, you don't, it's unloaded. I'll just pull the trigger. It's not going to do anything. Well, it could. As clearly evidenced by this guy.
And there's circumstances you need to have layers of safety. Like as a gun owner, for example, my kids are too young for me to really in depth explain what guns are and what they do and things like that. I am working on it. You know, my son knows what my gun is. He knows that it's mine, and he also knows not to touch it. It's not a mystery, and he knows the rules, but he's still so young that it's like easy for him to forget when he's excited, right? So my guns are locked away, and they will be locked away. They're easily accessible in case of emergency, but he cannot get to them at all in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. When he's older, I'll have groomed him to the point when he's 10 or 11 or 12 years old where he knows what he's doing.
That boy's got a lot of energy. I'm just thinking like maybe 15 or 16, maybe
well,
25 or 26.
I really don't really care to have like a dog to go fetch anything, you know. I shoot a bird.
So
I just send my son. Did a lot of running today. No, it's just funny. This is not gun safety. This is an idiot.
The exact opposite of gun safety.
Right. And so this is not demonstrating gun safety. Anyway, to move on, that topic, I think we've beat it enough into the ground.
Hey, what are we going to talk about now, Adam?
So I'm concerned that there might be some verbal guns fired at each other today. It should be a good time. Have you guys noticed that there's been a bit of a firestorm around a recent Arizona bill?
I think it's SB1062.
I think you're right.
I think Jan Brewer vetoed it last night.
She did.
She's a big purple pansy. Has nothing to do with whether she thought it was right or not. That's just a personal opinion. She's a big purple pansy, and she didn't want to put a name on it because she was scared.
She's scared. All right. The reason why I think it'd be good to talk about this is because...
Yeah, let's break it down.
It's for a few reasons. Now, SB 1062, what it does is it extends religious rights to private property that people own, aka businesses, trusts, funds, and other entities. Correct? Now, corporations, businesses, they're treated as if they are people. They have rights and they also have responsibilities. They pay taxes and all kinds of things. this bill has been described as a means in which somebody can extend their religious beliefs to their business. Therefore, if they're against homosexuality, they can discriminate
against gay people.
against gay people.
what-
So,
Okay,
but
sorry.
while we set this up, now it was passed and then vetoed, and there's the picture that has been painted is that this is a big victory for freedom, right? For equal rights and things like that.
Mhm.
But it's not that simple, and I'm definitely torn both directions. And what's nice is that we don't really agree,
Right.
but we're friends and we know how to have a discussion without breaking down a friendship. And I think it's
Do we?
important.
Do
that
You guys
we-
are both stupid. I'm sorry. No. Sorry, just
No,
had
go
to-
ahead. Oh, no, let's,
no,
let's get in it.
No,
Let's get in it.
you're a dummy.
Because I think there's one thing that I have yet to hear because everybody's talking about religious rights
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
or civil rights, like
Mhm.
gay rights. There's one very important right that I have yet to read anything about online on Facebook in the debates, and that's private property rights.
Right. I'm not hearing that anywhere. Okay, here's my biggest issue with online debates about this. I keep seeing both sides of it. Everybody on Facebook that's against this says things like, I saw one of my friends is a good dude, smart guy. Oh, one of your friends too. Stayed with him out in Ohio.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Anyway, he's a smart guy and everything, but he said, well, how's a restaurant owner going to know if somebody's gay or if it's just two guys hanging out at a restaurant? It's not really about restaurants. I don't know a restaurant. I know several restaurant owners, but I don't know any that are going to see two homosexuals in their restaurant and say, get out of my restaurant. Really, it's about the two cases that were in New Mexico where the photographer, we covered it on this show, the photographer, it was ruled by the court that she had to photograph a lesbian wedding, even though she said, well, this is against my religious beliefs. And then up in Colorado, it was somebody that had to make a wedding cake for this basically same situation, right?
Right.
Specifically weddings. are what's-
Specifically
yep.
weddings. So
Right.
they were saying, and the people didn't want to do it because they were saying, well, I think that that's kind of my endorsement of your situation, and I don't want to endorse your situation.
Right.
I don't agree with it.
Now,
Okay, this is not about a restaurant,
right.
or the Circle K or something. Nobody's going to stop them from buying a soda or getting a hamburger.
Right.
Maybe there is somebody like that out there. I've never met that guy. I don't know
Right.
anybody like
well,
that.
here's what's interesting too, because this is in response to those other situations, and I'm as a business owner myself, I wouldn't be someone that would deny business because I'm a capitalist. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But here's the thing: the baker, the guy who made the wedding cake in Colorado, he openly said, "If you have a birthday, I'll make your cake. If you have a party, I'll make your cake. If you have a fundraiser or a charity or
Yep.
any reason." If you want to come in for Valentine's Day, I'll bake you a cake. I'm not going to bake you a cake for your wedding specifically because I don't believe in that that institution extending to homosexuals. Wouldn't have been my choice. I would have been like, "Sweet, how much money you got?" You know what I mean? Like, because that's just how I work. I don't really care what you do with your life, right? But here's the interesting thing: do we legislate who can and cannot do business with each other? Because in New Mexico in particular, it was kind of frustrating because they basically told her, you're going to show up to a wedding you don't want to go to. You're going to be uncomfortable regardless of we don't care if you're uncomfortable, and you're going to do good work. And if it's not your best work or on par with your other work, we're going to come after you.
Well, what's interesting, actually, the judgment actually came back after the wedding was done. She actually got another photographer already by that point. So at that
Right.
point, it was just about forcing somebody and saying to the rest of the public, listen, if you guys have a business, you will take any client that comes in. You can't turn them down.
Right.
And
That's not quite true. Not any client.
Just
Who?
clients who are protected by their
So here's
Civil
the
Rights
thing
Act.
with SB 1062, and everyone's getting all up in arms. And Adam even said people now have said that this is a victory and yay, hooray. Except that whether this law passed or got vetoed, nothing would change in Arizona. Nothing.
Yeah.
Currently, before SB 1062, you could discriminate against homosexuals if you wanted. There's
you can
no law.
discriminate technically against any group that's not protected by the federal Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Correct.
So you could be like, I don't like brown-haired people.
Mhm.
I don't like
Now,
blondes. I don't like.
here's the thing.
short
This
people.
argument's
It
getting
doesn't matter.
getting thrown around, and sorry to tell you, you're both wrong. Okay.
Okay.
Here's why. Like Adam just said, you just said there's no law in Arizona preventing those people from discriminating, right?
Correct. Yep.
Adam, what did you say?
There was a Civil Rights Act passed by the
Oh,
federal government in
Oh,
1964.
a federal law.
Yep.
Right. Look at that. Okay. So they can sue under federal laws. Okay. Now that might take place in a federal court. But what we have a lot in Arizona courts is that people cite the federal constitutional amendments. All the time, people sue under the First Amendment of the federal Constitution. They'll sue the state government or other people under a violation of one of the amendments of the federal Constitution. So just because there is not an Arizona law saying that you have to bake the cake for the homosexual wedding or whatever, or you can't discriminate against them,
Mhm.
doesn't mean that court case is not going to come up.
But that's
come
that's
up,
not a federal ruling either, because there's no federal protection for gay couples either.
because when the law was written,
They-
it wasn't added to
Currently, it is state by state. Like New Mexico has one. That's
Right.
why the photography thing was so big, and it was like because New Mexico has said gay couples are protected against discrimination. Arizona doesn't have that. So anyway, what I was saying was that currently you can discriminate against gays. Even if this law passed, you could do it. Whatever. It really did nothing. All it was a message, a statement, right? That people kind of picked up and took as like, this is anti-gay. And then the people promoting it didn't really do a good job of denying that at all.
No,
Really,
see,
in my opinion, they
There
did
was
a horrible job.
no
That's what I'm saying.
publicity. The
You
other
can
way.
you can still have a judgment right now. You can still have somebody sue under the 4th and 14th Amendment and just say, well, equal protection clause, and not cite a specific law and just say you violated my 14th Amendment right.
For equal protection under law, but isn't that only applying to government?
not private institution, because the main reason
Supposed to.
Supposed to.
but it hasn't. That's the thing. Here's the difference, and I think this is another thing that's not typically brought up. As a conservative, I recognize that there's a very bold line, and should be a bold line, between the public sector and the private sector.
Yeah.
And I will stand for any law that is passed that says the public sector, the government, cannot discriminate based on anything, including sexual orientation.
Yep.
I would march with the gay and lesbian community to make sure that gets passed, because I don't want my government deciding who's better and who's worse.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree
But
100%.
private property is different than public property. And as
so,
much as
so what?
and
So
freedom
what is your
messy.
what's your solution?
Freedom's messy. People don't want to admit that either.
Yeah.
But so here's my perspective. The other side, I would say. Currently, there are laws protecting blacks. Correct.
Yes.
There are
Federal
laws,
law.
Correct.
Mhm.
There are laws protecting Christians and Mormons and
Well, that's
Buddhists.
the Second
Mhm.
Amendment, yeah, or the First Amendment.
but in the anti-discrimination in the Civil Rights Act in 1964,
You can't discriminate against religion.
religion,
It's in there.
Right.
Yeah.
color, race, national origin, right? Those are things that are protected already.
Right.
Our society has said, and in 1964, who was it? Goldwater? Is that who it was? Arguing, basically saying we don't need these laws because the private sector will figure it out, right?
Right.
Well, it didn't happen that way.
No, he definitely lost.
Over
that
the past
battle.
50 years, we've said these people are protected.
Yeah. Right.
So that's the world we live in. Now, to say that these people are protected and gays, you guys aren't, to me, that's wrong. And there are people who say, well, no, freedom of religion and all this stuff. But ultimately, what that sounds like is it sounds like you're saying we don't like gay people. Because you're saying black people are protected, Christians are protected, Mormons, Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, they're all protected, but not gay people.
That's an interesting take on it. And it's not a take that I probably have previously considered. But instead, I would say we need to go the opposite direction.
Yeah, we just need
I know
to
I agree.
remove
I
it
agree with you.
completely.
I agree
Yeah.
with you because I know your perspective too of basically saying business can just do what they want. If they want
Right.
to discriminate against black people, let them.
Yep.
They'll lose business.
Exactly,
For sure.
right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do business with that business.
So what's funny about
Right.
this argument is that everyone arguing in the media, on Facebook, on TV, everyone's talking about stuff that's not. It's not the fullest picture that you could paint, right?
Right.
My side, I say we have these laws that protect blacks, religions,
country of origin,
all that stuff. We have that. Let's add LGBT groups to the mix. Let's do that. Or you could go the other way and you could say, we don't protect anybody. And business can just do whatever they want. Except I don't hear people advocating that.
Yep.
That's because I think
they walk this weird middle line of saying, well, let's just keep it the way it is.
Here's the thing.
And that's why it sounds very anti-gay.
Right.
I hear you.
That's
Okay.
true. I would say if there's one way to do it, that if I were to sponsor a bill in the federal government, because obviously that's where the Civil Rights Act is done, and that's basically bled down into the states that have made minor modifications to that bill, right? We can agree on that.
Right.
If I were to sponsor a bill, I would say that what you would do is you would amend it's the 14th Amendment, right?
That says
It's
what?
equal protection clause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically to talk about that, saying that applies to specifically government entities. That the government cannot discriminate based on any reason, basically. And you'd have to list out quite a few to catch them all. But yeah, I think the federal government has no business, or state governments, any government has no business in discriminating. Now, I will vehemently push social pressure on anybody who discriminates and makes our culture a negative culture.
I think,
But I don't think taking away someone's rights. Just the other week, we were teasing each other about how you don't fix tyranny with tyranny,
right.
and discrimination is tyranny.
Yep.
You're definitely imposing your will on somebody else, but forcing a photographer to do something that they're not comfortable with is also tyranny.
I actually had, interesting story. My aunt and uncle were looking for a house to rent. And
Boring. Is this interesting?
Nope, this is interesting. The guy that they shut up. The guy that they were going to rent from.
They're going to rent a house.
They're going to rent a house. The guy that they wanted to rent. Do I have to do the rest of it like this? The guy that they wanted to rent from had them fill out an application. On the application, he spelled their name wrong because he decided to fill. Okay, I'm done with that. He decided to fill.
Rated R.
He decided to fill out the application for them.
Their credit was too low.
It wasn't. He spelled their name wrong. That's important to the story. He gets back the application. He says, okay, you guys are good to live here. And he says, in the conversation, he tells him, yeah, I believe in numerology. And I wanted to make sure that you guys weren't an 8. And I don't even know how numerology works, but you apparently take the characters of your name. Okay, you take the characters of your name and you multiply and divide until it becomes
Something special.
a digit 1 through 9, right?
Okay.
And everybody's one of these digits. Well, he didn't want to rent to somebody who's an 8 because 8s have trouble paying their bills.
Oh, I was unaware.
Interesting fact.
Hey, that's not fair. I love the number 8.
8's a great number, but
I have the definition if you want.
You would
He
say
actually-
that's not fair.
my aunt
Socialist.
at the time kind of was having trouble paying her bills. And
Okay.
interestingly enough, he spelled her name wrong. She's an 8.
Oh.
Okay. He
So
in
numerology
his
is true.
No, but you can believe it if you want. I don't care. That's not really the point of it. But my point is that he's got the right to discriminate against 8s because it's his freaking house that he's renting.
That's true.
If he wants to discriminate based on that, if all he gets is 10 applications from 8s, which
Right.
I don't even know what that means. Strons, just read it real quick. Tell me what this stupid thing means.
Numerology is any belief in the purported divine, mystical, or other special relationship between a number and some coinciding events.
But you can't tell me why it's an 8.
It has many systems and traditions and beliefs. I don't know. I
Why
don't
is
see.
7
Okay,
not
all right.
the one?
But if this guy gets nothing but 10 applications from 8s,
Right.
he has nobody to rent to. Now, theoretically, there's 8 other digits that he could rent to, and he's probably going to get somebody. But if he wants to discriminate against an 8, then do it, because it's your freaking house, and you can rent it to whoever you
Right.
want to.
I think it's
But-
interesting because that's the exact point that people are trying to make online in different areas, but they're not really communicating well because they'll say, well, what if we discriminated against your religion? And obviously we've made it clear that you can't do that per the federal law, which I think is stupid because it happened all through history. But I would say, okay, then I'm not going to give him my money. I'm not
Yep.
going to go do business there. And if there's no damages to the discrimination, if they're like, you don't do business here, and then they go out and slash my tires, if there's no damages, then I just I'm going to spend my money somewhere else.
Yep.
That's just the
ones,
bottom line.
They're the ones receiving the damages. They're going to not get your money.
Right.
And as for that, even if you walk up to a restaurant and it says no Mexicans, no Hindus, no whatever,
Mm-hmm.
are you automatically going to add your name to that too? Okay,
Right.
no Adams.
Now here's an interesting
I'm going
thing.
to. Okay, no
Jeremys.
Jeremys.
Here's an interesting thing, and this is something I haven't heard, but it was brought up today, where I heard somebody say that this is actually good for the gay and lesbian community because it forces somebody to specifically prove their religious affiliation. Somebody can't just say, "Oh, I do business, blah 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 blah," and then, "Oh, I don't want to do business with you because you're gay," and have no religious affiliation, no call for religious backing. You have to basically. It says you can only refuse the right if it applies to these specific things. Religion being the one that this is talking about. So if somebody comes into, you walk into a bar, and two gay guys walk into a bar. No, and. A bad joke. So two gay guys walk into a bar and they just want to hang out, and the bartender is just like, "I don't like you," for whatever reason, and they kick him out because the law stipulates that it has to be connected to some kind of extension of religious liberty.
Yeah.
Technically, you could open the door to say, "Okay, I'm going to sue you for discrimination because you did not cite religious connection in your discrimination."
And
you know what I mean? It's
we-
not two freedoms clashing up against each other where you're picking one freedom over the other. It's just like, well, I don't care about you. I'm just going to do whatever I want. So some people are saying that by defining it as this and only this circumstance, you're actually allowing for
You're making
more
it harder
lawsuits.
to discriminate, is what
Right.
they're saying you're doing. Here's the one thing that I didn't. Not the one thing. There were a couple of aspects that I really didn't care for about this law. I was not ever 100% behind this law. And that's why you guys might have noticed I didn't post on Facebook about this. I didn't post on Twitter about this. I was not going to the defense of this law, even though I was probably 70% in favor of what it was trying to do. But they were saying, yeah, you have to prove that it's a religious affiliation. Well, who's to say that, like, I don't know, Adam's Garage isn't a religion? I go to the Church of Adam's Garage. Well, what religion is it? Is it Christian or is it Buddhist? No, it's the Church of Adam's Garage.
Right. And after the bill's passed, they're going to start doing regulatory work on it. And they're going to say that we don't recognize anybody's religion that isn't a registered religion, because I sure as
kind of
heck
stuff
don't
has
want to
happened,
have to
though, right?
register it.
What's that?
There has to be some kind of precedent for that, because I'm sure, there's many of these religions that are made up by, I don't want to say made up, I don't want to offend anybody, but made up by, by three dudes, and they say, "Oh, this is my religion. We worship this comet that's coming by," or whatever.
Kanye West. They worship,
Kanye West. Jesus. That's anyway. To me, though, talking about all this, it's just the arguments that are made, right? One way or the other. Well, does this mean that someone can just deny service because their religion says they don't like whatever? Well, yeah, but you can do that right now, right? There's only certain things that are protected. So people are making really, really, I don't want to say dumb, but bad arguments, saying, well, what about if you don't like blonde people, or what in your religion? Well, yeah, you can just do that anyway.
Right.
That I refuse the right to serve anybody, right? As long as it's not these specific categories. I think, like New Mexico has, right? If gay people really want a victory, they need a law like New Mexico has for Arizona that says LGBT groups are protected under anti-discrimination laws. That's a victory. SB1062 is pointless.
Oh yeah, it was a political move, and it was a bad one.
It was.
I also thought, in falling into that 30% that I was against it, I thought that this was a bad move because I'm all about proactive. And when we're gonna go to that audio because I want to talk about it.
Oh, you want to
let's
talk
play
about
this real quick, and then I want to.
Anderson Cooper?
Yeah, let's hear Anderson Cooper.
So Anderson Cooper is talking with. I love how the description. He calls him the anti-gay legislator, Al and Melvin.
Oh my god!
No, come on.
And I bet if you sat and talked to this guy, you're like, "Wow, this guy's not anti-gay at all."
Everybody against this law they were calling it the Arizona anti-gay law, and everybody
mean they
for
were
it was saying
using
the Religious Freedom Act in Arizona. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really willing to label that either way.
Either way, yeah. I'm pretty sure that's a Linsky tactics on both sides.
Yeah.
One point of clarification for SB 1062 that some people may or may not know is that it's just a modification to existing law.
Right.
Right.
The law was passed in 1999, correct? And so this is just modifying it, just saying person includes businesses.
Right.
So it's not even really like something new. But anyway, here's the interview with Anderson Cooper and anti-gay legislator Al Melvin.
Well, sir, the bottom line is this is not a discrimination bill. This is a religious freedom bill. We want to protect religious freedom here.
But you can't cite one example where religious freedom is under attack in Arizona.
Not now, no, but how about tomorrow?
Well, I don't understand what that
Wait,
means.
pause it. Okay. Yes, you do, freaking Anderson Cooper. Yes, you do. Not now, but how about tomorrow? It means we're being proactive, okay? Now, I'm in favor of this guy that sounds really, really bad in this interview. What's his name? Alvin? Alvin the anti-gay? What'd they call him?
Al Melvin.
Al Melvin.
Dude, this
Look,
guy, I'm sorry, he is just not prepared for a national
No,
syndicate
he's not.
like
If you watch
Anderson
the full interview, it is Anderson
Cooper. It's
Cooper.
painful.
It's pretty brutal what Anderson Cooper does this.
This guy's
taking- you're
a
taking
state
an-
legislator
yeah, you're
that's
taking
just
an average-
never been in... I mean,
For
they are,
sure.
Yeah. they're-
And going up against probably one of the most formidable media personalities in the world. Like Anderson Cooper is pretty amazing guy. Like
he's a smart guy.
super smart.
This
guy.
is just like a guy coming straight off the street and they threw him in the octagon in the UFC.
That is exactly what's going on.
Okay, so but at the same time, Anderson, okay, you're not stupid. Okay, I've seen your interview. You're a smart guy. You know what it means when you say, well, not today, but maybe tomorrow. That means he's being proactive. We saw it in New Mexico. We saw it in Colorado. We're being proactive and we're trying to prevent it from happening here. Okay.
So, but the thing that I don't understand about that is, and I don't even know how this would play out in a court of law, but when they were initially proposing this bill to the Senate, I watched there's video online you can watch of their actual proceedings. And they said that SB 1062 does not trump any pre-existing or other anti-discrimination laws, the stuff we've already talked about, race, color, national origin, religion. Okay. So if it doesn't trump that stuff, and in the case of New Mexico, if there was an gay anti-discrimination protection, well, then what would it do in that case to either? Right?
If it doesn't trump it.
Like if you have a law that says you can't discriminate against gays, but then
Right.
you have this religious freedom thing, but it's not going to trump any of those other laws.
That's pointless. Who said it didn't trump it?
One of the guys who is actually one of the guys who was really articulate on all things. I forget his name, but he was kind of the big proponent. He was some legal expert, studied Supreme Court cases, all that kind of stuff. And he said it wouldn't trump any of those anti-discrimination laws.
Even though it's
Because people brought up
written into the bill that it won't trump it?
Right.
Or-
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what grounds he was basing that on, but the state senators actually asked him and basically said, well, could someone refuse, would we end up with discrimination against blacks again? Like, would that
Right.
happen?
Right.
And he's like, no, this isn't going to do anything like that. It's just going to be for these certain
Right.
Okay.
cases, right?
So let's go ahead and hit play there. I want to hear the next part of this
what do you
because this is the one I want to talk about.
I mean,
Well,
if you can't
as I
cite
say,
in the entire
we-
history
we
of
don't-
Arizona one case where religious freedom has been under attack, or even in the last year where it's been under attack, is this really the most important thing for you to be working on right now in the state house and the Senate?
We're doing many things, sir. We are trying to stop Common Core from being implemented in the state.
All
We're
right, stop.
trying
Maybe
to
there was a question before that. I missed it. But
Well, that's what Jan
And it-
Brewer ended up citing, basically saying when she vetoed it in that decision, she said, I've asked for all these things for our state senators and representatives to work on, and they're not doing any of it. Instead, they're fooling around with this SB 1062 bill. It's vetoed. Get to something important, which, I mean, whether you agree with Jan Brewer or not, ultimately SB 1062 is like we've said,
It's
kind of pointless.
Stupid. Yeah, it's stupid.
that's one of the... Okay, here's my problem. My biggest problem. When... Okay, we've talked about the letter from the Danbury Baptist and how it's totally taken out of context, right?
Separation of church and state.
Separation
Yep.
of church and state,
Yep.
okay? The
Which is not in the Constitution, which I had
No.
to explain to somebody on Twitter.
Okay. Good for you. The letter, sorry, that was a letter to the Danbury Baptist. The letter from the Danbury Baptist is really telling, especially in this situation, because they actually at one point complain about the First Amendment. Not about its wording, or about whether they're actually going to be protected by it, but about the fact that it exists. Because they actually say, no, wait a minute. Why is the government trying to act like they grant us the right to worship freely? They're complaining that somebody took the time to legislate the freedom of religion into the Constitution. That's one of my issues with this, is that now that they have attempted to give the business a right to say, no, I don't photograph a homosexual wedding or whatever. Now that they've tried to legislate it and failed, now we officially don't have it. Guarantee you. If you tried to take that right to court, the court's going to say, no, that they tried that and failed.
Right. They've defined it. Because here's the
worst
we've
case,
lost the idea of natural rights is basically what you're saying. We're waiting
Yes.
for the government to grant us rights that we have naturally.
Yep. And even if I'm wrong in that scenario, even if I'm wrong that it goes to court right now, say they actually did pass it, and then the next legislator comes in and repeals it, then you're definitely in that case where the government now says, no, you had that right, but they took it away. You can't do that anymore, hands down.
Well, let's get specific because I think that's what people kind of want, and I'd be curious to find out. So in the case of the photographer, lesbian couple approaches a photographer, hey, will you do my wedding? In New Mexico, they've said, photographer, you have to do it.
Right.
Do you think that's right or wrong? Jeremy?
No, wrong.
Wrong. Adam?
I think as a government regulation thing, I think it's wrong.
I think probably on principle, and fundamentally that's probably wrong. But in the current legal system that we live in, and we've said that you can't discriminate against these groups.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're offering that public service and you're advertising, this is what I do, and you say, I'm not going to photograph it because you're gay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's a different reason, I just don't like you. You have a bad attitude. I don't think you can pay your bills. Okay, fine. Don't do your business. But if you say, nope, you're gay, I'm not going to do it. I think we got to protect those people.
Yeah, but by that thinking, how can you not protect against the 8 or the 7s or the numerology people or the blondes or anybody else?
We're drawing arbitrary lines.
Yeah, how do you draw the line at gays only, or and not go past that and say no, absolutely you cannot refuse service to anyone?
So here would be my thinking on that. If you're black, you were probably born that way. If you're white, you're born that way. If you're Puerto Rican, you're born that way.
Mm-hmm.
All things that you cannot change. You walking into a business, you can't strip off your skin and change, right? We've also said that religion falls under this. And most people would say that religion is a fundamental belief to a human being.
Uh-huh.
Now, you could go change it, and people do, but our culture has said that that's kind of who you are.
Uh-huh.
So you don't walk into a business and be like, I'm a Muslim now. You don't do that. You're Christian or you're Mormon or whatever, wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
People, now this is where it gets a little tricky, and people will say that being gay isn't a choice. They're born that way. So it's not a conditional thing that they can change. Like if you walk into a store and you're poor, well, you could go out and get a job and you can make more money. It's a conditional thing of who you are. It's not who you are. It's just a characteristic of you.
So your line would be, you cannot discriminate against someone for the way that they were born, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why, or not the way they were born, but just the way they are. That's why like disabled people fall under that category as well, and they're protected.
Okay. So my aunt was born an 8. The minute she got that name, she's an 8. Okay. I was born a blonde. I'm actually now more brunette, but I was born platinum blonde. So interesting little fact, I guess that could change. But why not those things? Or do we throw those things in?
See, that's why I think Stran's point earlier.
Those are conditional though.
Right.
Like you could change the color of your hair.
Well,
you
now,
could cut it off.
Sure. Here's
right,
the thing.
but I don't
you
want
can't
to cut off my hair.
This gets interesting too, because you talk about gender too. You talk about women's rights, men's rights. Is that even a thing?
No, it's not a thing. We have no rights.
Right. Now with modern science, it's different. But traditionally, you can't change your gender either. Right.
And Facebook, you can do it on Facebook.
Well, now
you
you
have 50
Facebook.
choices.
Sorry, Adam. What were you going to say?
No, I just think all of this whole debate goes back to the one point we made actually quite early on, and that's either you protect everybody and force everybody to do what everybody else says, which is kind of weird to say because it doesn't make sense. To force one person to do
Not everybody though. I'm not saying
but the logics would dictate that if you have a fundamental belief that this is a core part of who you are, you referenced your skin color. You can't change that. The place you were born. And we talk, so that's country of origin, disabilities,
gender. I'd throw age under there as well.
Right, age. And
I wasn't born old. I got this way.
No, but
and so you loop in homosexuality to that. If you're gonna just say, "Oh, only those people," well, I mean, I would say that a lot of people might say, a fundamental core part of who I am might be an interest in music, or you know what I mean, or a natural talent for mathematics. Who knows what somebody might consider a fundamental core part of their being. I mean, you ask any homosexual person and they're not saying, "Oh, my entire world revolves around the fact that I have same-sex attraction." They have lives beyond that.
Sure.
They're engineers and they're people, right?
Yeah.
We have plenty of friends that I think they're normal people, but because of this one thing, right? That they feel like they can't change. It's part of who they are. Now, other people might say, this aspect of my life, I can't change, and it's part of who I am.
It was, and to help you out, because you said mathematics,
you know what I mean?
right? I would throw someone in the future could say that I am an alcoholic. That's in my DNA. I can't
and it's
change
part of
that.
who I am, and
that's part of who I am.
that some people have
or I'm a sex addict. So you can't discriminate against me because I am a sex addict. Now that might be a conversation we have down the road,
right?
But I'm saying for this time that we're in right now, the things that are like conditional, like you're just drunk or you're a jerk or all the things that we say, you can discriminate. You can refuse service to those people. I don't think that stuff's ever going to be protected. Now there are situations though, like I just said, that are like more perceived negative things. I'm a sex addict, alcoholic, etc. Or I'm a smoker. That's part of who I am. Now you'd have a pretty hard case to make that that's who you are, but maybe we'll have that conversation one day.
Right. And that's why I'm saying we either expect it to progress where more and more groups come out and seek protection.
Maybe.
Or we go the other direction. We just say, look, freedom can be ugly, but social pressure and social culture can create a harmony that is a lot more attainable than legislation. You can maintain your right to discriminate while not discriminating. It happens in Arizona all the time.
And I would say to that, that's what Republicans said in 1964. And it tainted the party.
One Republican, because people, let's make that perfectly clear, because I did watch that video that you sent over. The person running for president,
Barry Goldwater,
he was for private property rights.
And he said,
right,
we'll let the private market figure this out.
And because he was vehemently, and a lot of the people in the civil rights movement, including Martin Luther King and others, said, I don't believe he's a racist. They just disagreed on how he was going to go about with the civil rights movement. Okay. So the problem was he tainted the party. Yes. And he really did, because does anybody remember how many Republicans in comparison to how many Democrats actually voted for the 1964 Civil Rights Act? Because if it wasn't for Republicans having well over 50% of them voting for it, it wouldn't have passed, because just barely 50% of the Democrats voted for it. It was definitely championed through Congress by Republicans.
But you nailed it on the head earlier, Adam, when you said, yeah, okay, I would vote for anyway, and I think you said this too. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of what I heard you say. I would vote for any act that would prevent discrimination by the government, because the government doesn't have any right to discriminate, based on anything.
Based on anything.
You hire the best person for the job. You don't look at a picture of the person. You just look at the resume, and it's, this resume is better, and it doesn't matter what color or sex or whatever they are. You hire the person that's best for the job. Okay. But the private sector, they've got rights. And now I hear what Strauss is saying too, that if we're going to protect 90% of people, we can't leave the 10% out and just say, well, we protect all those people, but you guys, you don't deserve any protection.
I'm starting a movement for the protection of white male suburban.
But
because they literally have nothing, and in regards to protections.
I honestly
I'm
think
gonna start a movement for protection for men who suffer from middle mustache baldness.
you need protection because y'all look like freaks.
Anyway, continue. the point.
Sorry, we interrupted.
Anyway, society's beyond the point now where we really need this government interference, where we really need the government to tell us, no, you have to let those people into your restaurant or whatever. Because the societal pressure is going to take care of it on its own now.
I think you're absolutely correct because that's the state of Arizona right now.
Yep.
You don't see
Yeah.
restaurants and companies saying no gays.
Yep. I've never seen that sign.
And I
It's
would
not a
say
problem.
Arizona
would say-
almost my whole life, and I've never seen a sign.
definitely,
Like
and I would say culturally, Arizona is moving more and more towards tolerance and acceptance, despite the fact that there's been no laws passed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm finding more and more a comfort between people being able to have a positive dialogue. And now than when I first moved here 7-8 years ago. So I just don't think that a law and government intervention is going to do it.
Then you have to advocate for what Jeremy's talking about and saying no one's protected.
Right.
You
Yep.
have to push for that.
But you're going to be
but-
labeled horrific things if you say that, because you're going to say, "Oh, then you're a racist." Because
Uh-huh.
and this is something we've talked about before. It is never if this then that in these circumstances. If you're against protecting blacks, then that means you are for discriminating against blacks,
right.
which
Wait,
is what
yeah,
will
yeah,
happen.
Which is
If you say let's remove the Civil Rights Act of 1964 so
Yeah.
that everybody has a right, and then push social pressure to make sure that people do not show racism, people will scream from the mountaintops that you are a flaming crazy racist.
Mm-hmm. So you have to make your
Right?
point very clear.
Yeah, you
You
have
get-
to make it super clear that we no longer need these laws because we are beyond this, because of technology and everything else. We are beyond those pockets of areas where they're going to just have deep-seated racism that nobody can ever penetrate. Our country is way too open with the internet and with social media and
Mhm.
everything. We can attack any place that is showing discrimination on a social level and not have to pass messy and confusing and almost ridiculous laws.
And even if that pocket did exist, even if there is a place somewhere in the U.S. where they are going to have a lot of discrimination, and every restaurant in town is going to have
Segregation,
one of
yeah.
those signs up, the United States has changed so much. It's so much easier to move now. I mean, now that's not a joke. It was really a lot harder to move back then. If you were poor, you might not have even owned a car back in the 60s. It wasn't as common as it is today.
And people
Sure.
had
You
held
know?
the same job for 20 years back then.
Yeah, look at-
Now it's not like that. People switch jobs every 3 years, 4 years. I mean, we live in a culture where we can fight discrimination on a social level, and we should. And as a libertarian or somebody who's more libertarian, I don't want the government getting involved. I want us to be able to sit down without Big Brother to be able to hash out these differences and come to a peaceful society without being told at the threat of imprisonment what to do.
That is
Yep.
one argument. That's one case to be made that no one's making. No one's
No,
making it
yeah,
because
no
you're
one's
absolutely
saying
right.
that.
They would be labeled a racist, a homophobe. They want to go back to
old people.
you just and 'cause
You're
it-
gonna push
'cause
grandma off a cliff.
You know what it would be? It would be an old white guy talking about it. It's who it would be, and he would be labeled racist, homophobe.
But
you
even
want
if
to go
it
back to
wasn't-
1970 or
Even if it
1776?
wasn't, that's the thing. Even if it wasn't, the NRA
Eh.
brought in a group of pro-gun African Americans, black guys that or pro-gun and pro-Second Amendment, and they are attacked vehemently by the left for being just Uncle Toms. You know, they
Sure.
they destroy him with these racist comments, and it's the fact that we are not fighting the right and the left, and we need to make this perfectly clear as much as we can. It's not Democrats and Republicans that are really fighting, because when you take away the government and the media pressure, you find that you agree on a lot of things.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
progressivism and big government versus freedom-loving people. And once we figure that out, we'll understand. Government, get out of it, and let us as free people work it out.
I'm gonna
Amen.
call out Francisco here on Twitter because I think he did a good job summing it up. He said it's a very tough and tricky issue. he's gone back and forth on it himself. And he says practically everyone today has a friend or loved one who somewhere is gay or bisexual. No one wants a world full of undue discrimination. A business owner, though, should be able to operate as they see fit. And I think that's what we're saying.
Yep.
We don't want to see discrimination.
Nope.
But businesses should have freedom because they're owned and operated by individuals who have rights.
Right. And if they have the right to destroy their business.
Yep.
Through social pressure and bad business practices.
And I will
that
say
includes discrimination. They have the right to destroy their business by practicing discrimination.
Yeah. And I will say this. I agree with you guys. That perspective of saying just get rid of all the anti-discrimination laws and just let businesses do what they want. I agree with you on principle. Except I don't think that'll ever win. And I think in the society that we live in right now, Jeremy's summarizing as these 90% of the people are protected, these 10% aren't. Just add the 10% to the 90. Just cover them all. Who cares, right?
But then what happens when one person's right fights up against another person's rights and literally the outcome is not determined by the two parties, but by a government official that's completely removed and has no consequence?
But we've already
to
had
the
those
decision.
arguments. In the past, there were arguments. Well, I should have the right to operate my hotel the way I want. I don't want to serve blacks. Too bad you have to.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that the Civil Rights Act back in the 60s didn't do a lot of good. But the social pressure did a lot more good.
Yeah.
Free men who are not involved in the government, pastors of churches, those were the men who really did it. Your Martin Luther King Jr.'s and others like him. You know what I mean? They weren't government officials and they weren't passing laws. They were changing the culture of America. And that is what stuck. I mean, nobody's like, oh man, let's have a special holiday for the senator or the congressman who sponsored the bill for the 1964 Civil Rights Act. No one cares about those guys because they were late to the party. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I had to look this up real quick because I wanted to get the quote right, because you're mentioning Martin Luther King. And what came to my mind is that when Martin Luther King, in his famous I Had a Dream speech, said, I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit together at the table of peace. I just happened to notice that he didn't say that the government will force the sons of former slave owners and the sons of former slaves to sit down at the table of peace.
Because there wouldn't be peace. There may be quiet.
They don't really like
but there
being
wouldn't
forced
be
to
peace.
do things. People don't really like that.
So, no, I think I'm really glad we had the conversation because I think we started in two different places and we found common ground where we can probably build on. And I hope people listening to this can find common ground with these other people because I'm seeing a lot of hate on Facebook. I'm seeing some people trying to have healthy conversations about it and some people having just flippant, obnoxious, like lace and cursing kind of rhetoric.
Yeah.
And I really hope that this can bring us together because Arizona needs some unity on principle, on freedom and that stuff. So I'm glad
agree.
we had the
Yeah.
conversation.
I basically have learned that you guys are both a couple morons. But go ahead and wrap it up.
Right. Well,
No, great discussion,
we're
guys.
better looking
Great
than he
discussion.
is.
If it had passed, I don't think it would have done anything, but I'm glad it got vetoed.
I'm glad it got vetoed too because when I'm not sure about a bill, I go the Coolidge way.
I'm not totally glad it got vetoed, but I wouldn't have cheered it if it had passed either.
Yeah.
So
I really appreciate people tuning in. Please let us know what you think about the conversation because I think it's really important. Check us out. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. You can always check us out at threeheadedeagle.com, and our podcast is always on iTunes and Stitcher. Thanks. We'll catch you later.
Oh, and if you guys ever want to send us any questions, just send them to podcast@threeheadedeagle.com.
Can you do the we'll catch you later one more time?
We'll catch you later. Wow, you were
quit
going
the
to get
beatbox. I was
music.
totally gonna keep going.
Oh, you didn't give me the sign, dude. You gotta give me the sign and keep going.
Sorry, but I need a big set of headphones that I can hold up to one ear and be like, keep it going, keep it going.
I'm not hearing my headphones. Not hearing. Yeah.
All right,
Turn it
me
up.
turn me up.